Game 3 in the books. I was in attendance, and we now have an unprecedented personal Warriors finals record of 0-3. So, like I said, the Celtics should have me on a private jet to every one of these games. But back in LA. So, don't worry about it, Warriors fans, for Game 4. Thoughts? First of all, the remake of the entrance into the Garden, I hadn't been since they've done this. Very, very Braveheart-ish, man. Drums going up the escalator, just wild crowd. Very, very cool. You know, I didn't feel like I was going to attack England, but if somebody had blue face paint on, I wasn't going to be surprised. As far as the game, all right, a bunch of different things that I want to get to here. Boston's offense, on top of the lack of Golden State defense, I thought was the story very early on here. Jaylen Brown goes off for 17 points, including 3 threes in that first quarter alone. 17 points in that first quarter. It felt like a constant layup line, whether it was just up fakes and being able to dribble around the perimeter defenders and the lack of resistance at the rim. I had Golden State scrambling. Golden State's lead was 2-0. And then it was pretty much all Boston, even though the end of the first quarter was, double digits, felt a little bit closer with 33-22. But that felt like kind of the story. 68 points in the first half by Boston's offense and plus 10 on the boards at halftime. They were plus 10, I think, like really early on. Still with some time to go in the first quarter, I believe, kind of looking up at the scoreboard. So it felt like, my rule on these games is every game has its own personality unless one team is far superior to the other one. That size looks like a problem in some games, and then other times size looks like an advantage. And it's just kind of how the game is going. I don't know that there's a real specific rhyme or reason, but we're very quick to kind of just go, oh, well, that's not going to work again, or they can't play this guy, or can't do any of these things. And I know it felt like maybe a little bit more Rob Williams and Horford split, but I'd have to kind of go in and look at all the different substitution patterns over those 3 games, because I know that was something that Simmons and I talked on Sunday, where I just don't like the absolutes of these two can't play together, or this guy can't play in this series, or this is something they can't do there. Coaches have shown us for the years that we've all spent watching thousands of games that they're just not as quick to bury guys as we are. I mean, it happens in baseball all the time. Somebody's just, not getting it done in the lineup, and they're like, oh, you're going to sit him. You're like, what? And put in the guy that doesn't play most of the time, just hoping that works out. So there's more faith with players and matchups than I think. Now, it's also teams can be really stubborn. Some coaches never want to change anything. But, Rob Williams, who spends most of the night looking like, oh, is he hurt again? It's unbelievable. I'm not calling it Braxton Miller. For those that remember the Ohio State quarterback, Stanford Steve pointing this out to me, that every time he went down, it looked like it took forever for him to come up. And then once you start paying attention to it, you're like, wait, yeah, he does go down. And then it's kind of like this thing. And football guys hate that. It's just like, hey, you got tackled. It hurts. Get up. Next play. That's not necessarily what Rob Williams is doing. But when you're watching it live, there's so many of these moments where you think, uh-oh, he might be done now. This could be it. Like Smart landing into his knee earlier in the series. You're like, oh, that could be it. So even if he doesn't look as spry, he felt like the defensive story in this game. I know it's 4 blocks, and it's funny, too, because this game, like Gary Payton, who hadn't played as much in the series, as we know he's come back from injury, he tried to take him. Nope. Nemanja got stuck in a matchup with him where normally he's not left to be a shot creator. But the shot clock, the play had kind of dissolved. It was sort of a scrambled, those plays where everything kind of falls apart and ends up in the wrong guy's hands. He gets it blocked. He had the block on Steph in the fourth quarter. I don't know if that looked like a goaltend on TV live. It was just a volleyball spike into the crowd. And that felt like every time Golden State thought they had. So there was one with Clay where it was like, I can't even believe you tried that. That felt like a huge part of Boston's story in limiting who Golden State was at times, other than Steph growing crazy. Golden State was up 2-0, as I mentioned. They were down 82-73, and then the rare 7-point possession, which you don't see a lot. Steph hits a 3. It's called the flagrant, so they get the free throw. That's 4 points. I hated the flagrant call. Again, the replays in the arena are always different. I need to go back and watch the game again. And then Porter hits kind of a scramble 3, too, at the end. So now all of a sudden we're talking about 82-83. Steph hits a 3. It's 83-82. That's the only other time they had a lead. 83-82 and then 2-0, I believe. Golden State scored 11 points in the fourth quarter. Clay was 0 for 3. Draymond didn't take a shot. Steph only made 1 3. His numbers for the fourth weren't great. And actually, Steph was awful for the first few minutes of that fourth quarter. He had 3 turnovers. One you could argue was just a bobble pass to Draymond. There was another pass early that was terrible. Then he tried the cross-court pass, and Rob Williams ended up with the basketball on all 3 of those turnovers that ended up, I think, being credited to Steph. At least 2, but definitely 3. Steph had a 3, and then he only took, really, you could say he took 3 real shots in the fourth quarter for Steph in a quarter where Golden State scored 11 points total. Golden State did not score another point in the fourth quarter after the 3:19 mark. That's it. They had 100 points at 3:19, didn't score again. Steph's fouls. I know there was a debate on the television broadcast about keeping him in with the 4th foul, and you could see that Kerr changed the Steph rotation stuff around a little bit. He took him out before the third quarter was finished so that he could bring him back at the start of the fourth. I have a belief that if you're a guard and you have foul trouble, you can play around it. Bigs sometimes get caught on help late. The instincts are go up to challenge a shot. I always feel like the bigs being in foul trouble is much more of a concern. I mean, that is when we used to like bigs in the NBA, than a guard. And a really good guard, and granted, Steph can be a dumb fouler at times. There was a fouler, but I'm not going to get into like which one wasn't or wasn't a foul. But with 4 fouls left and you're a guard, you should be able to survive. Like you're doing the other team a favor. And I guess Mark Jackson had said, "I'm scared to death," and then of him being in with the 4 fouls. I think Jeff Van Gundy said, "I'm scared to death of not being out there," because Golden State vacillates between what we saw in game 2, where you go look at all of these shot creators, right? I've talked about it now for years. Look, how many different players does this team have on offense that can get their own offense going, and it's not a stretch. And when Golden State is right, it's like, man, they kind of have like 4 of those guys, if you include Wiggins and Poole. And when it's bad, and Clay was better in this game too, by the way, but not in the fourth quarter. When it's bad, it's, well, do they have anything other than Steph? And the Celtics, once again, defensively just stepped up to this game that felt like, oh, the Celtics are up again. Oh, here comes Golden State. Celtics are up again. Here comes Golden State. Celtics answered every single challenge. And I don't know if that's being at home. I don't know if it's just the energy or a night where, and we're falling for this again, where it's like, oh, Boston's now figured things out. It's probably their series. We've already done this. This will be the 3rd time. Game 4 will likely have a completely different personality again. But Williams at the rim, the rebounding edge, Jalen starting him off hot, Tatum finishing. The 2 drives that he had in the fourth quarter, especially the one where he shook Wiggins and finished to the right side of the rim, was an incredible play in person. Smart hits 2 huge threes. And then you factor in the Draymond part of this. He was bad last night. And when it's bad for him, it's bad. Although when he has the singles, 7 points, 8 assists, 9 boards, 2 blocks, whatever, and they win, it's like, man, he brings some energy. And when they lose, you're like, he doesn't do enough. But he got caught up in it last night. I don't know if that derailed him. I think he's mentally tough enough that the crowd chanting F you Draymond and Draymond Green sucks, which you knew was going to happen. He's the focal point of this stuff. He wants, I guess, the smoke, as the kids would say, and he gets it. So I think he understands that part of the deal. But on the 6th foul for him, where Smart definitely sold it, and then Draymond's explanation after the fact was that Horford was on Steph, and then Smart was there, and he's trying to push him up. I just think he wanted to shove somebody at that point in the arena because they left it up on the Jumbotron the entire time, so I'm not sure how the broadcast handled it. He went at that ref as much as anyone I've ever seen not get a technical. I can't believe he didn't get a tech. Now, maybe the rest going, he's already fouled out. It doesn't really matter. And with Golden State, even a 10-point lead with a couple minutes left, you're still fearful. So I always feel like techs are selfish. Sometimes coaches, I can kind of get why it happens. Maybe it's a star player in a big moment in a series where it's early on to try to set some sort of tone. But for the most part, I feel like technicals are a really selfish play. And it's like Draymond wanted to get it last night. He stared down that official after he screamed at him the whole time, after the 6th foul. And then he stared him down like a guy would stare somebody down for cheating on his wife. Or I guess probably a guy wouldn't get mad at the other guy as much. Let's rephrase that. He stared down a guy as if his wife had cheated on him with the guy that was the ref. All right? I think that's a better explanation. And then he still let him go. And then he went back to the bench, F you, expletives, the whole deal. And I'm thinking, like, back to the Van Gundy thing. He goes, and he's absolutely right about this. We give the offenders more rope in the league than we do the mild-mannered guy. Like the Kyle Anderson stuff we saw. Like pretty even-keeled most of the time. Actually, even-keeled. He'd be below whatever that is. And for Draymond, he runs so hot the whole game that there's almost more rope with him because I guess they understand that part of it. So, to sum this all up, I'm not yet convinced that something has been discovered. And maybe that's my own stubbornness with how I look at games and how now a really good team in Golden State is down 2-1. They have a little bit, maybe they have pressure on them. Maybe the experience doesn't matter. They're not going to feel the pressure as much. They're used to this kind of stuff. And when Golden State is rolling like they were in the third quarter, you're like, okay, like they're going to figure this out. But I thought Boston's defense and just the presence of Rob Williams, not only the blocks, the presence of him being there and Tatum having a couple really nice finishing moves there, ended up being the story for the Celtics. So they're up 2-1. We'll see what happens Friday.